If you came by the stream last night, you know that we played Fi, and I would say that we tried to play Fi as more accurate. Fi did not feel up to the challenge. I even renamed my deck list. Head jabs just don't cut it anymore. Later in the stream, though, we transitioned to working on Cindra and trying to build a deck list. Now, chat helped me put together a deck, but after the stream, I went straight to the lab. I was working on this deck all night, and I think that there are too many powerful synergies here for you not to at least look at the list and give Cindra a try, as I think she's going to be a very powerful day one hero. Thanks for stopping by, guys. I hope you enjoy the video. We're going to start off by talking about Cindra herself. So Cindra says whenever you hit a marked hero, create a fealty token. I have really not leaned into the marking concept of this deck. I don't think it's necessary for the way I've built it, so that's kind of on the back burner in our game plan here. She also has a once per turn instant of pay 3, equip up to 2 Draconic Daggers from your graveyard. This costs 1 less to activate for each Draconic chain link you control. This is very, very important and honestly what fuels our game plan. Looking at our equipment, the first thing we have is Dragonscaler Flight Path. Now, I was playing Snapdragon Scalers before this got spoiled, but this card just seems too good not to be playing. It's a 1-block battle-worn equipment that says instant, pay 3 and destroy this. Target Draconic attack gets go again. It is attack, not attack action, which is important. If it's a weapon or ally attack, you may attack with an additional time this turn. This ability costs 1 less to activate for each Draconic chain link you control. This means you can use Dragonscaler Flight Path to actually throw one of your daggers an extra time, which is insanely powerful and really leans into what Cindra wants to be doing, giving us more chances to push Mask of Momentum. Flick Knives is an obvious arm piece that we're going to have in the deck. For anybody who doesn't know, there's a lot of synergy with being able to throw a Kunai on the second chain link, and then on the third chain link, if your opponent tries to block your Mask of Momentum, you use Flick Knives to throw one of the previous Kunai to keep the Mask of Momentum trigger alive, which means we're requiring more cards from our opponent on the fourth chain link to stop our Mask of Momentum hit, which is insanely powerful. Plus, this blocks one when we get into a bind. Tunic is in the list. I also have Flamescale Furnace in the sideboard, and we're going to talk about that later. But Tunic is in the list because I think that Tunic works very well with a lot of the 1-cost cards that are in our deck. Our daggers do cost 1. We're also playing cards like Devotion Never Dies and Mounting Anger, just so that we can have those extra, like the resource energy here from Tunic, I think is going to be very valuable for us over the course of a 6 to 9 turn game. Kunai of Retribution is our only weapon. We're playing 2 of them. This has once per turn action. You pay a resource. You destroy this when the combat chain closes, and it's a Kodachi with go again. Draconic Kodachi is always what I wanted. I just didn't think it would have to be destroyed when you attacked with it. But with all of our Cindra energy, it's actually insanely powerful that it does get destroyed. And we're playing Ninja's favorite, Mask of Momentum, just to try and get value and put our opponents in an awkward situation and on the back foot. Mask of Momentum does a great job of forcing cards out of our opponent's hand, and in a really bad situation late in the game, we can block for 2 with it. Ancestral Empowerment. This might be one of my favorite Ninja cards that honestly doesn't see enough play. I think this card fits so well into the deck. We are playing multiple on hits in cards like Mounting Anger, Devotion Never Dies, Mask of Momentum is a big one. So I'm a really big fan of playing 3 main deck Ancestral Empowerments. In a lot of my Ninja decks, I have sideboarded this card for matchups that like to block a lot. But I think in this deck, we're just going to have it in the main deck. It's very powerful. We can get a ton of value out of it. And I really, really like having this as a 3-of in the main deck as we look to go over the top of our opponents trying to block us out. Blaze Headlong feels like an auto include. Like, why would you not play Scar for a Scar with just like less conditional go again? Playing a red card is one of the easiest things to fulfill. Blaze Headlong looks great. Blood Runs Deep is such a good card. This is basically a 0 for 2 with go again because it costs 1 less to play for each Draconic chain link. So you could literally pitch a blue and go Kunai and then throw Blood Runs Deep, and you actually get to flick all of your daggers at them, which is very powerful, meaning that if your opponent blocks this out on the 3rd chain link, your daggers get flicked automatically to keep the Mask of Momentum chain link alive. The fact that this card blocks 3 as well is very good. This card's going to be a staple of Cindra. Everybody knows Bram with Cinderclaw. If you played Fi, this card's so good, it's very powerful, and it really works with our Draconic synergy that we're looking for. Burning Blade Dance is a really good card. This is just a 0 for 3 with Go Again pretty much all of the time. If you have a hand where this doesn't have Go Again, it blocks 3. This card's great. It lets us flick one of our daggers if we hit an opponent, which is really good. This card just fits well, has a lot of synergy, and I really like this card. Devotion Never Dies. This card is going to be insanely powerful. I have had some people say that they don't really like it, and it can feel clunky at times, but I think this card is powerful enough that we're going to have it in our Cindra deck at all times. A 1 for 4 with Go Again, and it says when this hits, if a Draconic attack was the last attack on the combat chain, banish this. If you do, you may play it this turn. So if we lead on a Mounting Anger and then play this card, or even if we just go Kunai and then play this card, if this hits, we have the ability to banish it and play it an extra time. LSS has really leaned into a lot of these powerful synergies with cards that you can play an extra time. It's incentivizing your opponent to block and do things to try and interact with you. This card feels really good, and I think that Ancestral Empowerment is going to make this card even better. Drop of Dragon Blood. This card feels like an auto-include in every Cindra deck. I would probably say every Fang deck. And if you're playing Fi, you should be playing this in Fi as well. This card costs 2, but it gets cost reduction for each Draconic chain link you control. And it also says gain a resource and draw a card. You can literally pitch a blue to go Kunai, and then play this for free, go back to 2 resources, and replace itself. This card cantrips and gains you a resource. I don't know why we wouldn't be playing this card. At Legendary, it's very powerful. If you draw it late game, it is an instant, and you might get stuck with a weird hand where you can't block, but I think this card's too powerful not to play, so I'm going to be playing this in every Cindra list I have moving forward. Looking at the rest of our main deck, we have Ignite. I got to be honest, I was not big on this card when it first came out. When this card was first spoiled, I was like, it's a 0 for 2 that reduces one thing. I don't know about this. Don't sleep on this card. This card is insanely powerful. This is a 0 for 2 that reduces a dagger or an attack you're going to throw at somebody, and it has Go Again. This card is really good. It has good synergy with the deck to give you the ability to be able to throw a Mounting Anger or a dagger afterwards if you don't have the resources standing up. If you don't have the second chain link, you can also throw a Blood Runs Deep here. This is a very good card, and I think it's going to be included. The greedy part of me wishes it was a 3 block, but that's just because I'm a Guardian player and I like to be able to block 3 when I can. Mounting Anger has been a long time Draconic staple. Just the 1 for 4 that gets the additional buff is really good. A lot of times we throw this card and we don't actually have anything to buff from our hand, so it's just a bluff. But we're adding more powerful cards like this so that people have to block and that people have to at least consider how they're going to play out this turn. Oath of Loyalty. We have literally just added a 0 for 4 that blocks 3. If you have a hand that does not work with Oath of Loyalty, you can just block with it. Most hands, and when I say most hands, I mean I'm talking 95% of them that I have seen so far work with Oath of Loyalty. This card is insanely good. The one thing that I don't like about it is you have to start your turn with it. Now, I understand why you do. The greedy monster in me wish you didn't have to. This card's insane. It's going to see play in almost every Cindra list. I like it a whole bunch, and it's felt great so far. Next on our list is Rising Resentment. This is a 0 for 3, but it also has the ability to help us play around Jarl's Frostbites that he can give us by making the reduced cost of another card. For anybody who doesn't know, if you throw Rising Resentment and you also have a Blaze Headlong in hand, and then someone gives you a Frostbite, but Rising Resentment connects, you can actually banish Blaze Headlong to play around the Frostbite. Because of the cost reduction, it will get around the Frostbite and give you a lot of value this way. Now, Frostbites aren't going to be too scary for us. We are an 18 blue deck, but still, it's good synergy to have. Ronin Renegade, quite literally just a head jab, but it's Draconic and it starts the chain, and we can throw it to trigger Mask. Spreading Flames. I love this card when we played Fi. Now, when we played Kodachis with Fi, we didn't play it as often, but I will tell you, this card is insane in Cindra. The fact that your Kodachis are literally just Draconic, and not only can you attack with them and then get them back later in the turn, this card is basically Art of War in this deck is how I see this card. This card is easily a 1 for 6 or a 1 for 7 almost every single time you play it in Cindra, which is insane value. because this card comes in at 1 for 3 and then it buffs everything after it as long as they have less power than the number of Draconic Chain Links you control, which means you can pitch a blue to play Spreading Flames and then go Kunai, and then throw a head jab and like throw a Brand with Cinderclaw and come in with a 0 for 4. The value never ends with this card. Spreading Flames is going to be an absolute house in this deck, and I'm so glad I own them from playing 5 back in the day. Wrath of Retribution. This card, if you haven't seen this card, just trust me, it's insane. At rare, this card is going to be crazy. I'm glad that they made this a legendary card because it means that at rare, it won't be expensive, but this card is insanely powerful. This is a 3-cost, 3-attack Draconic Ninja action. It also blocks for 3, which I love. This costs 1 less to play for each Draconic Chain Link you control. When this attacks, daggers you control get +1 and cost 1 less to activate. You can literally start your turn by pitching a blue to come in for 3 and then throw your daggers for free. You can throw a Blood Runs Deep to flick both of them, get your daggers back, and then throw them again. This card has insane synergy, and there's like actually a really cool combo where you can throw like 26 to 30 points at your opponent in 1 turn when you count like all of the flicking damage you can do off of like a 4-card hand. This card is really powerful. I'm glad they made it a legendary, to be honest. If they gave Cindra 3 of this, I don't know that anybody could stop her, but this card is really good. It fits super well, and it's basically like a better Spreading Flames. So I like the fact that we have like 4 Anthem effects in our deck right here. This is my spicy one of. I have seen people playing Salt the Wound in their list, but I think people kind of forget how powerful this card is. Salt the Wound gets +1 for each attack that has hit this combat chain. This card is crazy. It blocks 3, and it comes in probably as a 0 for 6 to a 0 for 9 on most turns if your opponent is not wanting to block the daggers, which most people don't want to do in theory. So I think this card as a one of is really good. I like having it in the deck. It's a good arsenal target. If it doesn't work with your hand, just block with it. It blocks for 3. You can also pitch it to the kunais if you need to. So this card has a lot of synergy, and I think it really fits into the deck very well. But at one of, I think it can be super spicy and will probably win you games later in the game. All right, Cinderskin Devotion. It's very easy to get Draconic Chain Link, so playing this card feels safer than it did in 5 back in the day. It's a blue 3 block that we can also use to attack with if we need to. I like this card a lot, and I think it fits well. Lava Vein Loyalty. It's a blue 3 block. It works for what we're trying to do. We can also attack with it if we need to. It just fits well into the deck. Stab Wound was a card that we played in 5 when we were running Kodachis. I really like this card a lot. Stab Wound is a great card. It's a blue block 3 that you can also end the chain with, because if you're able to throw 2 daggers and then like Blood Runs Deep and get them back and throw them again, Stab Wound has an on-hit effect that is real life loss here. I'm a big fan of Stab Wound, and I think this card's going to see a lot of play in Cindra. This Rounds on Me is kind of like my tech for trying to make the mirror just a little bit better. Don't get me wrong, giving your aggro opponent like more cards is always scary, but this Rounds on Me can really mitigate the damage that a lot of the daggers are trying to do. You turn Mounting Anger into an easy card to block with 1 card. It's a 1 for 3. Blaze Headlong turns into a 0 for 3. So there's a lot of value here with this Rounds on Me, and somebody suggested it to me in chat last night, and I really like this card. I think it's going to fit well for what we're trying to do against Fang and Cindra, and I expect this card to see a lot of play. Warmonger's Diplomacy. This card needs no introduction. This card's absolutely insane. It's been a bajillion dollars since the day it released, pretty much. I think they were like $8 once upon a time, but now they're like 50 or 60. This card's crazy powerful. It's really good. It helps us in the Viscerai. There's a lot of decks that we want this against, and the floor of it is it's a blue that pitches to kunais and other cards, or it blocks for 3 if we really need it to. So I'm expecting us to have that card in the deck at all times. 18 blues is more than I was expecting Cindra to play. Now, there are some lists that are playing Tome of the Imperial Flame, and they're only on like 12 to like 14. I'm on 18 blues because I think that we're a pretty resource hungry deck for the most part. We want to make sure we have resources every turn to make sure this works. If you have extra resources and cards that don't do anything, you can always just block with them. Like, you don't actually need to, keep both blues in your hand, but Playing 18 should work out pretty well for us because we are a resource-hungry deck, trying to make as many things happen as possible by throwing kunais every turn, followed up by any of our one-cost attack actions. So 18 blues is a really good starting place for this deck. Now let's talk about our sideboard options. I have 3 Command & Conquer in the sideboard. We're on 18 blues and Tunic. I think playing 3 copies of Command & Conquer is perfectly fine. There's a lot of matchups that you're going to go second in because you want to try and get a lot of value out of them. Although it is worth mentioning that if you go first, you can actually get a ton of value by just pushing damage over the top that your opponents can't block. But Command & Conquer is a really good card when you're going second. I'm playing 57 cards in my main deck. Into a lot of aggro matchups, we will probably just play Command & Conquer going second because you have the ability to draw into it and then just pressure your opponent's arsenal, because it's pretty safe to say that your opponent's going to arsenal on turn 0. Most players go for that play unless their hand is just absurd. So Command & Conquer fits really well into the deck, and with 18 blues, we can play this pretty safely most turns. Next up is Erase Face. Erase Face has really gotten a lot of stonks recently. Like, this card has shot up in price. This card is very powerful. It works against a lot of decks. This card is very good against Florian, and it's very good against Aurora. It's pretty much good against every hero from Rosetta when we look at this card. But I also really like Erase Face into the Draconic heroes because they are also talented. So pretty much Erase Face gets value into everything from the last 2 sets, which can be really good. So deciding when we want Command & Conquer and when we want Erase Face will probably be a little bit of a tough decision, but I have them both in here because they're both very powerful. I do want to mention, I do not think it's correct to play Erase Face and Command & Conquer at the same time. That is not the idea of the deck. We are not this mid-rangey, slow it down, block a bunch kind of deck. I think we want one or the other to kind of, utilize and get some value out of and make our opponent's hand awkward, offer some disruption, but we want to be on Command & Conquer or Erase Face in most matchups. Sink Below, I feel like, has been included in almost every deck since the dawn of time. I'm always going to have Sink Below in the deck for the most part. It's just a good value defense reaction into Guardians, or into some of the bigger decks like Florian that are, just trying to pressure us a lot. And I like Sink Below as a good way to get out of certain things. It's also worth mentioning that Assassin is going to be one of our matchups that we probably struggle into, and Sink Below can get us a lot of value against Assassin. So I like that card there. A 1-of Salt the Wound in the sideboard. So I know that we have one in the main, but I really like having this one on the side because I think it just fits so well. I'm also running Mask of the Pouncing Lynx, which we're going to talk about here in a minute. There are going to be some matchups where your opponents want to block a lot. If you played Fi back in the day, we played Mask of the Pouncing Lynx as a way to facilitate when the Guardian players drew into their big hands that they didn't want to block with. Now, that's not really the case as much anymore because a lot of the Guardians are designed to run blocking and playing a slower game, but having Salt the Wound in the sideboard as an additional copy in Mask of the Pouncing Lynx can pair really well into those grindy slog decks. And when they have their big hands and they don't want to block, you got to be able to sense that, use it, and get value out of Salt the Wound to try and push yourself ahead. That all you got seems like a pretty easy include. It's good in the mirror. It feels good against Fang. For the most part, there's a lot of attack reactions that buff, so there's some questions there. But I think that all you got's going to be really good. That all you got's also very good against Aurora, getting value out of the Starfall. We have a lot of places we can get value out of that all you got. Slapping this in the sideboard felt like a really good value add, and I'm going to be looking to utilize this card a lot. I have Flamescale Furnace in the deck. I think Tunic is going to be our main source of, our chest value that we're looking for. But Flamescale Furnace feels really good as a card to block into Victor or Bravo, potentially Florian. It really depends. So I think that Flamescale Furnace will have matchups where we want it in. So I have it in the sideboard just in case. But we're going to have to work out when we want those in certain matchups and when we would rather have Tunic. Mask of the Pouncing Lynx we've kind of already talked about, to be honest, but this card is very powerful against decks that want to block a lot. It gives us the ability to add that second Salt the Wound in and go search out a deck that's going to go search out a card that's going to be a really good chain ender and lets us push a lot of value on the end of a turn. So Mask of the Pouncing Lynx is a very good sideboard addition. I have Tide Flippers in for AB1. That's literally its entire purpose. I don't think I'm going to run anything past AB1. If Kano becomes big in the metagame, we may have to swap this around, but Tide Flippers is where I'm starting with. This is one I want to talk about here for a minute. Quickdodge Flexors is one of the most interesting cards I've ever seen. I told someone in the Discord last night, we're probably just never going to play Civic Steps again. And then I saw someone say the same thing on Twitter. It's probably true. This card is absolutely insane. It gets around Command and Conquer, and it can be added to every chain link where your opponent goes wide. I think this card is actually going to be insane in the mirror. I have this in my deck because we are playing 18 blues, which means there's a decent chance at some point we draw 2 of them. If our opponent tries to go 6 to 8 wide, we can literally pitch 2 blues and just block 12. This card is absolutely insane. This card is a mirror breaker, and if you have not considered playing this card in your Fang or Cindra deck, or in whatever deck you're playing to try and help combat the new heroes, this card's going to be insane. I did say that Mara, I saw that Mara on Blue Sky said that she actually fears that Dio is unplayable because of this card. And don't get me wrong, this card is probably this might be the best defensive tool that they have ever given us. And I don't think it's better than Crown of Seeds, but this is up there. This card is absolutely insane. Quickdodge Flexors is going to be in pretty much every deck. People are probably just going to try to play Count Your Blessings, Flexors, Fatigue, random nonsense. So that's something to keep an eye out for. But I think it fits really well into the mirror and what we're looking to do. And we can really try to slow our opponents down. There are 2 cards in the deck that I'm not playing that I think most people are going to be skeptical of and have questions of why I'm not playing them. First one is Breaking Point. I was thinking about playing Breaking Point in the sideboard, and I just decided to play Command and Conquer instead. Command and Conquer, in my opinion, is just a better version of Breaking Point when you have the resources for it. At 18 blues and Tunic, I think like most hands will be able to facilitate throwing the Command and Conquer and getting value out of it. So I wanted to play Breaking Point, but I ended up cutting it because I think Command and Conquer just fits better over Breaking Point. The second card is Lava Burst. I was originally on Lava Burst in my list when I was putting this together, but I ended up cutting it because it felt like there were other cards that synergize better with what Cindra's trying to do. I'm not saying that Lava Burst isn't good and that we can't get value out of it, but I think there are other cards that are just better. So hopefully we look back on this, and when I'm wrong, we can all laugh about it. You guys can point back to this video, but for now, Lava Burst is out of the list. You can find a link to the deck list in the video description down below. Be sure to give it a try and let me know what you think in the comments or what changes you might make. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe for more content. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Take it easy, guys.